Good morning. It's 7:28 a.m. on the 28th of January 2022. Welcome to the MTT News of the Week.
Hello.
Hello, Jen. So this week we are covering, as we always do, news from communist parties and workers' parties, as well as the headlines. So some big stories from this week. We have an airstrike in the war against Yemen has killed prisoners in prison. A Saudi airstrike. The Ukraine situation, we're going to give an update on that, particularly by providing a comment from the Workers' Party of Ireland, their thoughts on the situation, as well as some other stories about a National Guardsman and Chernobyl, which relate to the Ukraine situation. An F-35 jet, the taunted, very expensive F-35 jet, has crashed in the South China Sea. The THAAD missile defense system has been deployed in the UAE. There's another story which is quite interesting about Longshoremen Dock Workers Union has handed a plaque and a jacket to the Chinese embassy representative in the US, which is quite interesting. Fight Club, the film Fight Club, we'll be talking about that and what the ending of that film was changed to in China. Biden has been reaching out to Intel, the computer company, the technology company, which makes chips and whatnot. Biden has been reaching out to them. In Burkina Faso, there's been a coup. The military has overthrown the government in Burkina Faso. One of the Supreme Court justices in the US has decided or announced that he will resign. The James Webb Telescope is now in position and will be observing deep into the beginning of the universe. ISIS in Syria has broken out this week out of a prison and been able to take control of it. And there's been a huge fight against ISIS in the US as well as Kurdish forces. We'll be talking about that, what happened there this week. A Chinese university managed to develop a hypersonic missile. And the last two stories we'll be covering then, of course, is an update on Julian Assange's situation, as well as any other headlines from communist parties around the world. So yeah, first story then, Jen, we want to talk about the Saudi situation, or let's say the Arabian Peninsula situation, with two different stories there. Yemen, the airstrike on the prisoners, as well as THAAD being deployed in the UAE. Thoughts on that or comments on that?
Well, it's just the title of today's episode, Hypocrisy at its finest, in 21st century technological flavor, right? Let's talk about the bombing of the prison first, I think. Because we were discussing leading up to today's episode. You said it very beautifully, Richard. Bombing a prison, like a prison, is where there are people locked up and not able to leave.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
Yes.
That if you bomb it, the people in there cannot leave when the bomb drops.
Right.
I mean, that's... You cannot just evacuate. It's not how that works.
Right. So usually with airstrikes, they will be justified in saying, collateral damage was avoided because, we assessed the area and knew that there was no one there. There was a clear open field, or we knew it was a derelict building. We'd been watching it for 3 months and we hadn't seen anyone come in or out. Or they'll say, we gave warnings. The Israelis will famously say, we gave them a few minutes or a few hours warning. So it's their fault if they were in that building,
Right.
Where in this case, a prison, we didn't know there were people in the prison. Well, we gave them a warning. Why didn't they come out? I mean, I'm not being facetious, but yes, there's going to be people in prison, lots of them, probably packed because it's a prison in Yemen. I highly doubt that they have a very low, a very spacious prison system right now because of the situation in the country. So you definitely know there's going to be a lot of people in that place.
For sure.
So yeah, I mean, just for context, it was in Sada in Yemen. So this is on Friday. I mean, that war's been going on for 7 years now, so it's pretty a long war by any stretch.
I mean, Yemen is like one of the most warring regions of the world, right? It's famous for its higher gun ownership per capita compared to even the United States.
Right.
So we can imagine the kind of chaos that goes on there, right?
Yeah, sure. But as we said last week, also, the Saudi military, with all of that training and equipment, they do not use it very well. It's not effective. It's not a fighting force by any stretch of the imagination. Just another thing to comment,
Right.
of course, in response, Houthi supporters had a huge rally in Sana'a, in Yemen, against these airstrikes and against specifically a reaction to this one on Friday.
Yeah.
But let's go straight. Obviously, this follows on from the story which we covered last week, the week before, the attack on the UAE. So
Of course.
the Houthis managed to fire some missiles, some medium range or sort of short range, I'd say, ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is probably why the THAAD system has been set up in.
Yes.
Right?
So why this is significant is because this is just another example of how these reactionary forces literally cannot survive without the United States, the American Empire. I mean, the THAAD, THAAD, stands for Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, developed by the United States for the purpose of ballistic missile interception, ballistic missile defense. That was after the hilarious joke that was the Patriot systems. Essentially, what happened, long story short, and all technical jargons away, it goes like this. Once upon a time, they decided to build the Patriot system to shoot down the Scud missiles that the Soviets developed, which was being sent to sold to all countries, right? It didn't work because during the Iraq War, essentially the invasion of Iraq, they say that they were able to intercept Iraqi ballistic missiles, but really they didn't intercept it. They didn't intercept any. The reason that the Iraqi missiles, a lot of them failed and only some of them hit, was because Saddam Hussein had a very poor understanding of physics and ordered his engineers to basically like strap extra rocket boosters onto the Scud system without any kind of adjustment. And so it shot way too fast and exceeded the melting point because the friction between the warhead and the missile in the air exceeded the design speed and just melted in air, as only a few didn't melt. But at the time, Americans propagated it to be, we shot down those Scud missiles. And then all American allies started buying Scud missiles. And then eventually, even American allies who Patriot system, even American allies who purchased the Patriot system started to figure out that, wait a minute, this thing doesn't work. This can't shoot down ballistic missiles. So America, in a panic to reassure its allies, developed the THAAD system. Well, the THAAD system is basically, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit before with the DPRK situation, because there's a THAAD system in South Korea that U.S. deployed.
Yeah.
What it is it shines a giant beam of radar that covers, it just roughly visualizes like 1/3 of U.S. or 1/3 of China. That's the radar range. It can see anything that's flying above a certain altitude in that airspace. And what is exceptional about it is that it can meet any conventional lower tech ballistic missile in midair, and it is very accurate. It has like these mini rocket boosters that can very accurately let it hit kinetically directly onto the warhead. And so it's not using explosion, and it's literally more environmentally friendly if your enemy is shooting biological or nuclear warheads and whatnot.
Oh, so that's good to know.
Yeah. But this system has been made obsolete by hypersonics. That's why these missiles are that's why hypersonics is a big deal. because the most advanced thing the United States have, THAAD, is obsolete. But clearly, in the case of the Houthis, their armed forces is not advanced enough to deploy hypersonics en masse in real battle. So, we had this case of, one goes out, THAAD intercepts, and then that's the end of that story. So it's just, the kind of things the kind of expensive running costs that you would need to maintain imperialism and hypocrisy.
Right. Yeah, I think if we remember our first story, the Saudis are airstriking prisons, and on the other side, they're using THAAD to shoot down, the Houthis' ballistic missiles and drones and whatnot. Again, we also mentioned last week that they will use javelins to kill individual fighters.
Right.
So, on an attrition
let's say hello to our audience. Hi, Frolics.
Oh, hello. Yes, hello. See you guys. So at least on an attrition level, I'd say the Houthis are running an effective war.
Yes.
Because they can use a drone or a ballistic missile and they can hit an oil facility or whatever it is. And in order to counter them, the UAE or Saudi Arabia has to use THAAD missiles, which, as you already mentioned, is designed to stop, very fast or very expensive, much bigger weaponry. So again, the Houthis are fighting a good war then. And if we do want like a visual, proof, I guess, of the fact that the Houthis are up against imperialism, that they're in a joint fight. Yeah, there's the narrative of the THAAD being deployed against North Korea and by extension China, as well as now against the Houthis. So I see there's a nice little parallel there. But
and also in Eastern Europe against Russia.
Sure. And additionally, though, in the UAE, where the Houthis were attacking these facilities, the UAE facilities, oil facilities and whatnot, there's also a huge American and US base, and the troops there were told to go and get into their bunkers and be on standby. So, the poetry of seeing how the Houthis are up against the empire, but particularly the empire's proxies, we can see that. Right. But yeah, let's go on to, so that's the UAE and of course the Saudis. Let's talk about the F-35. So talk about military technology, which we'll go to the F-35 as well as just the general China situation that we've seen in the last week. Some stories come out. Let's go straight to the F-35. Because,
good lord.
As everyone knows, we're not going to go too much into what the F-35 is. People probably know. Very expensive jet, vertical takeoff
claims
landing.
to be able to do everything well, but does nothing well.
Right. So that crashed in South China Sea. One of the best fighter jets in the world.
Leading to many injured on the American aircraft carrier. I believe it was Carl Vinson.
I'll take a look. I'll confirm now. Let's see. It's Carl Vinson.
Yes. Ta-da. All right. The F-35 is a meme of a. Yes, it's a living meme. Besides the stealth coding and the more advanced electronics and the concepts behind modern warfare, it is literally worse in every aspect of conventional aircraft design compared to even aircrafts from the 80s by Europe or Russia or United States itself. Because basically they for anybody that's worked in project design, like when the customer wants to not pay extra and yet cram way too many functions into just one project and keeps demanding more functionality out of either one software or one physical product, that's what the F-35 is. But for the entire US military industrial complex. So it has been known for just being an utter meme. It crashed in Japan. It crashed in Italy by the Italian Air Force. It crashed by I believe it was the British Air Force. I could be wrong this one. And now it's crashed by the American Air Force. And then but they want to sell this thing because they want to make their money. So if you look at the investigation reports, the plane is perfect. It's always just pilot error.
Pilot bad, yeah. Yeah. So I think someone it might have been Carl Jar, one of the guys on Twitter, had a good
Yeah.
comment. We shared a meme, and it's just sort of saying, how's that pivot to Asia going, militarily speaking? And it's like, you mentioned the crashed submarine that Wolf.
They're crashing into something. They still don't know. I mean, what?
F-35 went down, and you've had other mentions of other ships crashing into each other and other stuff, and also like actual casualties. There's Navy crewmen.
Yeah, and American destroyers literally just crashing into just civilian cargo ships because it's so meme worthy. But
right.
So
let's
yeah.
Sure. So F-35 out the way. Let's talk about what that means. I mean, in terms of diplomacy and look at the China situation, right? So we also had another nice story. Let's first talk about Intel, though. Biden. So
sure.
Biden's Build Back Better project.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to say it's fully dead, but maybe we could say it's fully dead. It's certainly been set back because of Congress and the Senate votes. But
I guess let's just ask our viewers in the United States, have you personally seen anything being built in your vicinity? Any road getting fixed? Ever? I haven't.
That's because Build Back Better hasn't been passed. So bear in mind, Build Back hasn't been passed. It's failed to pass, right? So yeah. Oh yes, we will be. Don't worry, we'll be talking about Burkina Faso in a moment. Yeah, we'll be covering that one from our viewer there. So, but first, let's just cover. Biden has reached out to Intel because Build Back Better has ultimately failed or hasn't passed, as well as legislation for the Voting Rights Act. Biden has looked to Intel to sort of invest in the US and buoy the China agenda, as the New York Times calls it. So basically, $20 billion of investment by Intel to build a semiconductor plant in Ohio, not far from Eugene, I'm sure. So, I guess this is just his attempt to try and find something to put his name to. I mean, he's got a low approval rating, so a big domestic investment, which is kind of something that he can hopefully get some positive spin off of.
I mean, at this point, as we talked about last episode, it's not just difficult from a cost perspective, because how inefficient everything is in the United States.
Yeah.
At this point, it is literally difficult to organize civilizational activities in general. Just today, a few hours before this episode, a friend of mine texted me that he works in Walmart. That all their entire front desk reception got COVID. All tested positive in one day. Of course, he works in the towards more of the rear, so he's fine for now. But think about it, really for a second. When you have people concentrate, everybody just flip and get COVID. What even is that? So, really organizing production, really here in the U.S. in this moment, are we serious right now? I don't want to sound too comedic, but reality is just turning into sad comedy at this point.
Yes,
there's nothing I can add to make it funnier. It just is. Right, to talk about Build Back Better, how you actually build anything is, of course, our next story, right?
The Chinese. Before we go on, I just want to say on this, strategically speaking, in an economics perspective, they say it right here. It's actually said by Biden or one of the Intel guys. Is of course the glaring fact that on semiconductor and microchip or chip production in general, the US is completely lagging behind. They're not economically competitive, and of course, it does tie into national security. If you don't have the chips to power high computers and technology, that is a strategic limitation.
See, here's the thing: if the United States was 5 years ago saying that, I would have very much taken it seriously. But in the state it is now, the United States is not civilizationally competitive. Period.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. the US barely produces 10% of the computer chips in production. But bear in mind that chip design and research, the US does still have a big
of course.
need.
Right.
But production, they don't produce. 90% of it is produced
Mhm.
elsewhere. But yeah, let's go to the next story. You said, talking about another form of, or the other side of diplomacy, US to China diplomacy. And I like this story a lot. One of the main reasons I like this story is that it references the name of the union, which I always love saying. It's one second, let me get a few. It's the US Dock Workers and Longshoremen Association. So these guys, this union, these union workers gave a representative. Here we go. 1 second, let me get a few. Yeah, they gave a representative from the embassy. The Chinese embassy obviously put this up on their website. They gave him this plaque of recognition, as well as a commemorative jacket. And there it is, his little sort of, I guess that's a bomber jacket. I don't know what to call that, but yeah,
yeah.
And there you go. It says Chinese companies are reliable partners of the Port of Boston in job creation. And Ambassador Qin Gang accepts the plaque of recognition and commemorative jacket from Massport and International Longshoremen's Association. That's the one I love. Longshoremen.
Yeah, such a lovely ancient term.
It is archaic, right? It's very 19th century. Longshoremen.
But hey, it's got flavor, Yeah,
it's good. It's good. But yeah, so they gave him a jacket, and I suppose we always hear, this is the thing you always hear, right? Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, these industrial projects are taking it's a diplomacy. It's a new colonialism. But the workers themselves at one of these ports are giving them a plaque. They're honoring them. They are very happy to have the Chinese relationship with trade specifically. These are the dock workers. These guys are happy to have
because
specifically job creation.
Exactly. Right, like talk about build back better. I mean,
yeah.
First of all, build. Like, come on, that's right. But that just goes into the whole just descends into meme status. I mean, I'm sorry for like today's episode to just like be like this, but like that's just the way the world is right now. History is officially in its farce stage, and we're living through it. I mean, that is quite literally one of the few things that's actually being built in the United States, and that's actually creating jobs right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, so in terms of the U.S., just a small story. Yeah, Supreme Court Justice. Any comments on that, Jen? I don't really want to talk, unless you really want to speak about it.
No, not really. Does that change anything? We all read State of the Revolution, or hopefully go read that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to say that he's promised that he will assist or pick or help in the picking of a black female to replace him. Okay. And obviously
have fun. I mean, they only process like however many cases per year.
But and also, there's still going to be a minority. So the liberal or Democrat, whatever you want to call them, choices will still be a minority from the conservative ones.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to cheat the law, just like overload the Supreme Court with like more than 300 cases a year, you win. There's absolutely nothing they can do about it. I promise.
Right. I mean, the other thing to say is that I think with the whole Supreme Court election or selection process, it's kind of a very weird long game of chess of people's lives, right? So they obviously know that this guy is old, so he's like, well, we can't risk that in 4 years' time there's going to be a Democrat president. So let me retire before I die so that we can choose a younger person so that our seat is safe, so that, because some of those selections, I mean, some of the people were picked by Reagan. So you talk about a legacy, some of those justices have been there for, early Clinton days, maybe Reagan days.
This is just literally just feudalism on steroids with their high priests and magistrates, I guess. I mean,
right. But let's move on to our third sort of area of conversation. Let's talk about Ukraine. We were going to have a guest on today, but time zones and whatnot can be confusing. So he will
He
be
will
joining
be
us
with
next
us next week.
next week. So and we also have Danny Haifong from Black Agenda Report will be joining us at some point. He has to check his schedule. Very busy man with all the writing stuff that he does. But yeah, very excited to get him on. He's a really good journalist. Let's take a look at Ukraine. So Ukraine, Jin, couple stories, right? We've got the National Guardsmen that killed 5 people.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into that first?
Sure. I mean, this is literally just what starts to happen in any kind of military mobilization effort when you are so desperate that you do not account for mental health of your recruits anymore, or you do not even care who joins. You just take literally anybody, and then this kind of stuff starts to happen. And then, of course, you top it off with some, classic kind of in China what we call old military warlord tendencies of abuse and mental and physical abuse. Then that's the kind of thing that you'll get.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we have talked about. Yeah, I think you've commented off on that in terms of the specifics. So this guy, National Guard guy, being brought into service, conscripted, I guess, and not perhaps the processes of checking, background checks, training, as well as mental health, as you say.
I want to comment on one thing. Like I've been seeing footages of the Ukrainian military of like their own propagandas of videos of themselves. At this point, they're literally just taking anybody. They're taking like overweight neo-Nazis with like God knows how many health issues and mental health issues as well. Like they don't care anymore. Okay, like they are that desperate, and yeah.
I mean, this is odd because they've got this thing going on, the mobilization, as well as people have been training in the woods. Women, men, old people, all types of people have been training in the woods. But at the same time, the president also came out with a comment saying there's nothing to worry about. So life is continuing in Ukraine normally. But I think there's lots of commentary about this. On one side, you have people saying the invasion is imminent, and then the other people saying, oh, it's not that bad. And then there's also talk about the fact that it won't be an invasion.
Yeah, it's just like
it would be a coup. So there'll be an attempted coup with a pro-Russian candidate. I forgot the name of the guy who will come out and do something in Ukraine. That's how it's going to happen. It's not going to be an invasion.
People who are obsessed with Nintendo games. Okay, think of it this way. People literally are like life is not normal at all over there. It's just getting to the point of like mobilization, but like for what? I mean, I've been looking at some American amateur military scholars looking into the current state of the Ukrainian military. Half their freaking organization chart is empty. I'm not even joking. On the brigade level, like all the infantry is like 60% filled. As in like a unit of like 2,000 people, there's only like less than 1,200 people. And then like all the technical equipments of anti-air, artillery, electronic warfare, reconnaissance is just non-existent. Straight up empty. Like, what do you even say to that? So like, I do not blame the Ukrainian people who are like forcibly conscripted into this at all for saying like this is a worthless war and we're not going to win. Like, yeah, if it does happen, you're not going to win. And then then we have the liberals who are basically have been Pavlovianly trained to like cry for war whenever it's a thing that the United States doesn't like aesthetically. Oh, it's the dictatorship is coming. They're invading. We need to go protect democracy. It's like they have been trained by a bell and some dog food to drool at the sound of the bell of war against Russia, China, Iran, DPRK, Houthis, Palestine. Go pick one.
Yes.
But then the reality on the ground, as we've been covering for all this time, is just this kind of back and forth where probably not much is going to happen.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so
yeah.
right. Yeah, I guess that's all we have to say on that. I mean,
I'll read. So I think I agree entirely with what you just said there.
mhm.
I think what we should do is we should read some other commentary on this. So we have
Yes,
a
yes, we
comment from
should.
the Workers' Party of Ireland. So the Workers' Party of Ireland has made a statement on Ukraine. It's quite long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Mhm.
So it's specifically on, of course, general tension in Eastern Europe, but obviously specifically on Ukraine. I'll cut straight to just some of what they have said here. Let's take a look. Yes. Okay. So let's go from here. 1 second. Okay. So the present crisis has echoes of the pre-1914 era. A long period of peace is undermined by constant manifestations of crises,
Ooh.
each one rendering the possibility of a war a bit more likely. The Anglo-American hegemonic powers are wary of rising industrial rivals. Germany then, China now, and tempted to strike before they can attain the full measure of their strength. However, many fundamental differences have emerged since 1914, not least the possibility of a terminal nuclear conflict, which serves to reduce but not eliminate the possibility of escalation to a generalized world war. The other major departure is the accomplished industrialization of Russia and China and the concomitant setting of the peasant question through a process of urbanization and proletarianization. Both historic states were extremely vulnerable to revolution in the 1914 period because their state form, remnants of a pre-capitalist mode of production, had been brought into contradiction with the realities of industrial capitalism and the social relations it engendered. This is not the case today. That vulnerability was less in the more advanced capitalist states of Central and Western Europe, but there certainly was a threat to bourgeois domination due to the sheer scale of the labor movement and its effective merger with socialism. Irrespective of how it played out, this socialist labor movement was perceived as a threat to the social order, and all the great powers had to factor it in when maneuvering against their rivals, lest they be overthrown by socialists in the aftermath of a failed geopolitical conflict, as indeed they were in Germany, Austria, and Russia. This is also not the case today. The socialist labor movement has been supplanted by a nebulous and effectively pro-imperialist left, which is, by its nature, i.e., lacks the basic absence of really mass organizations with an abject interest in an alternative economic system, does not constitute an alternative social order in waiting. As such, the Western ruling class do not fear their own overthrow if they receive a bloody nose in Ukraine. On the other hand, there is no appetite amongst any European country to fight a war in Eastern Europe, Ukraine, in order to further US hegemony, and it is doubtful that they would, in any case, be able to muster any force capable of fighting Russia. It will be up to the Ukrainians to die for Western capitalism. The reassertion of state power via capital, even by a non-working class government, would be in itself an improvement in the objective conditions for socialists. The specific step required is for the United States to suffer a major setback such that it can no longer operate as the gendarme for the Western bourgeois. While the USA seems to be working towards internal collapse, a significant military setback would serve to accelerate the reduction of their domination abroad and create space for the reassertion of state power more broadly. Last two paragraphs. NATO has made noises about Ukraine's right to join it, should it so decide, but the decision has to be mutual. NATO could simply decline to consider Ukraine for membership, and the present situation would be easier considerably. Of course, they know that, but they want to maintain a state of tension with Russia in order to keep the European nations subservient, increase the possibility of selling LNG, and ultimately to effect regime change in Moscow. Despite our weakness, socialists must continue to agitate for peace, even when the logic of capitalism is pointing to the creation of large-scale conflict. In Ireland, of course, this entails the banning of the US military from utilizing Shannon and other travel facilities and the ceasing of any intelligence sharing. While the immediate problem stems from Washington and its delusions of eternal hegemony, the deeper causes lie within the internal dynamic of the capitalist system itself, as profitability is squeezed, and with a rising economic powerhouse in the Far East, the conditions of geopolitical competition have re-emerged. As long as the impetus for attaining ever-increasing profits remains, international competition will likewise remain. This can only be overcome by a planned economic system that serves humanity as a whole, which itself depends on working-class control of states with real power, as opposed to states which exist at the sufferance of financial capital. It is in this narrow assertion of state sovereignty that Russia despite its fall from the USSR, can yet serve as an agent of social progress. That's from James O'Brien, the International Secretary of the Workers' Party of Ireland.
Oh, that is beautifully said. I mean, I
good.
basically agree with that.
I quite like that.
Yeah,
pretty
very
good.
Very quality analysis, way better than some of the shenanigans we've heard from the past. Let's just say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, good comments. If you want to read the whole thing, just go to the Workers' Party of Ireland. You can find that. Pretty good stuff there. But yeah, let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
I think we're probably going to be talking about Ukraine next week. I'm feeling that's not going to be resolved. And we said
Yeah,
that
because there's going to be some skirmish and then some bomber plane or some tanks or some artillery is going to be doing some shenanigans. Yeah, that's just how that goes these days.
Yeah. So I think let's. I'll only mention this because it's not that big of a story right now. The ISIS Kurdish situation. So there was a prison, or there is a prison in Syria holding many former ISIS fighters, and they managed to break out and get help from. It was using a truck bomb. They managed to take control of the facility. They took a bunch of the kids who were also prisoners, who are either child soldiers or children of ISIS fighters, and the argument for keeping them there is that they think they're too risky to let out, that they'd still just become ISIS fighters, so they keep them in these prisons. But the ISIS fighters then use them as hostages. Anyway, huge gun battle between them as well as the Kurdish and US forces. Eventually, they've defeated them. They've been defeated. Airstrikes as well as special forces were sent in. It's been dealt with, but in some ways, it's a little bit concerning to see whether ISIS has the potential to come back in that region. But let's leave that one. Let's discuss that.
Yeah, we'll see next week. We'll see
next week if anything happens. Let's go on to one more thing is that Julian Assange has been successful in his bid for the Supreme Court in the UK to hear his appeal before he gets extradited to the US. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet. It's the appeal has been accepted, but the legal process formally hasn't begun. So there's not been a result there. But that's what's happening. It seems that there is the potential for him to not go to the US if the Supreme Court decides in the UK. Final story for the day, which I think will be final two stories for the day. First, Burkina Faso.
Yeah, of course.
So, yes, Burkina Faso. This week there was a coup in Burkina Faso. The government was overthrown. Initially, I think on Monday, the military or people were saying, "Oh, it's not a coup. It's just there's some sort of upheaval." And then the classic, thing that is always quite funny. A soldier appears on TV, and at that point, he doesn't have to say anything. When you see a general on the news, you know it's a coup.
Yeah.
There's no need to say anything else. A general is reading the news, it's a coup. But the reason. So why? So apparently, if you're not aware, in Burkina Faso, as well as Mali and other countries in northwestern Africa, there is a constant struggle against Islamic or fundamentalist insurgencies. And the French have been assisting, let's say, sending troops with that. I use that term loosely. And apparently the military, the Burkina Faso's forces, do not feel like they are able to win this fight, that the government is mishandling it and they're losing the fight, and they're just not getting the troops and the support that they need. So they've overthrown their leadership because of that, because of the difficulty in fighting the insurgency. A side story, also, I suppose a part of the story that came out is that they then asked, so the soldiers or some people, some protesters, then asked or have been demanding that Russia intervene and assist in Burkina Faso and join them in fighting the Islamists. Any thoughts on this?
This is, oh god. If I remember correctly, some episodes ago, I did mention some United States West Point related podcasts programs, and their experts talking about basically like in our language, I guess. In our socialist language would be paraphrased to like, due to the failure of the American empire, there's going to be a massive power vacuum that the U.S. failure has created. and then global terrorism will be such a problem that it would be problem for that it would be like the one of the few aligning interests for all the countries of the earth, China and USA and Russia included. It's one of the few cases where like some American analysts are actually looking at this pretty objectively, because like they are actually going at it from the perspective of okay, very chaotic society, people do not have avenues of kind of addressing their social concerns, right? And then like life is so terrible that they think like literally joining ISIS is a valid option for like life, just as like becoming a tradesman or like becoming an engineer or a farmer or something. How that is a problem, and then how the phenomenon of what they call the quote unquote international fighters, international volunteer fighters, are psychologically very different from local people who participate in a civil war or coup or whatever. So yeah, it's a problem that the United States has created. The previous story with the ISIS prison thing as well. I mean, the entire Kurd situation in Syria is like America's attempt at a one nation, two system nail kind of in the wood to split the plank that is Syria, the people of Syria. Yeah. And it's tribes with guns backed up with U.S. Special Forces and airstrikes and CIA, right? That's what that goes on. Because like we have to understand that like like what I said, like we will probably be talking about ISIS next week. Is that this is the messed up part? Okay, the founders of ISIS actually created a not just a code of belief, but a methodology of thinking that is basically a cut short version of the Hegelian dialectical philosophy. And then teaching people to pursue a way of life. That's why it is so hard to get rid of it, because it's like they took some inspiration from communist philosophy and then just like took it to like the most ridiculous end possible. But then like that kind of philosophy, because how it is a cohesive world system, a worldview system, and a way of life that the founders of ISIS has created. It has vitality. Like I'm serious, in the most messed up
It
way
does. It does.
possible.
Yeah.
That's why it props up in various places that seems geographically completely unconnected.
Mozambique.
Burkina Faso is all the way in West Africa.
Yeah.
Whilst Syria is in the Middle East. That's like 1,000 miles away, if not more.
Yeah. No, and also in Mozambique, you have an Islamist IS-inspired group in Mozambique. So nearly at the bottom of Africa, nearly at the tip of Africa at the bottom, right down
that's
there.
Like 2,000, 3,000 miles. But anyway.
A huge spread. Yeah, you're absolutely right on that one. Yeah. So I think just on the comment on this one is just obviously the area itself, the region, I should say. We've seen a coup in the last year. There's been a coup in Chad, Guinea, Mali, and Sudan. So it's not just Burkina's politics here. We're seeing a regional thing. Discontent with an establishment for whatever reason. Obviously, the economics would obviously play a role there too. People probably have jobs, and of course with COVID, all of these factors are probably playing a role. Specifically, though, on Burkina Faso, as any, I suppose, communist or socialist or progressive, let's use that, will know, obviously Thomas Sankara is the famous leader of Burkina Faso, the famous young African leader. And he was assassinated in 1987. And the trial of the people that overthrew him in 1987 or killed him in 1987 started in October. And that's also gripped the country. So that's going on. And the French were involved in that one too. They played some role. And France generally plays an imperialist role or a neo-imperialist role. in the area,
Yeah,
controlling the monetary system, as well as having troops everywhere. But of course, our friend, Trevor Noah, failed to ask the French diplomat that he had on a few weeks ago about
I'm gonna
that.
make a prediction.
Asked him instead about what Chinese neocolonialism instead. That was his
Yeah,
talking point.
yeah. I'm gonna make a prediction right here.
Yeah. Quick one before we go into our last story.
Britain, France, and Germany are going to be keeping up neocolonialism in Eastern Europe, Africa, and all the oceanic island colonies of the world until the end of time.
Sure, no, of course.
And then humanity will have to confront that in the form of a world war in like 40 years from now. That's my prediction.
Right, unless of course they collapse themselves. I don't know.
Yeah.
But let's go to our last story. We have to finish a little bit sooner than expected today. We have some things to do, some personal updates. But it's a bit more lighthearted. Fight Club, the end of the film. So this was on Tencent, the huge platform, the gaming platform, video platform, everything in China. They have a version of Fight Club on there, which has a different ending compared to the original. So I'm not a spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Fight Club, close your ears. You're about to hear something in reference to the endings. Okay, so it's a famous film, a cult classic, if we're gonna call it. And in the Chinese version, so let's just jump ahead here. So if you watch the Chinese version, instead of a successful plot to destroy a series of buildings, in the Chinese version, Norton ends with a note. The film ends with a note to viewers saying that the police rapidly figured out the whole plan and arrested all criminals successfully, preventing the bomb from exploding. As for Pitt's character, the note says he was sent to an asylum and later discharged. And the censored ending was discovered recently by fans in China on Tencent, blah, 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 blah. But what's interesting is that the actual director of the film, the original director, he says, this is super wonderful. Everyone gets a happy ending in China. Chuck Palahniuk, the writer whose 1986 novel inspired the film, and then also he also said that the censored ending was closer to the ending of his book, in which the bomb malfunctions and the narrator wakes up in a mental hospital after shooting himself. So here we go. I think you want to explain the reason why this was changed, or why this version was shown.
It's very simple, actually. Chinese media theory, art theory, although it's like all over the place at the moment, especially since like reform and open up in the 80s, still, but like the Chinese media management governance body still believes in the old socialist theory of like, it's not necessarily about if law and order of the Chinese society or the CPC or whatever gets protected. No, it's not about that. It's about the triumph of human civilization and human society over like nonsense, like absolute chaos and absolute depression and absolute nihilism. That's like the kind of bottom line, so to speak, that like Chinese media has, like Chinese CPC, the Chinese government has for like all media. So like it makes perfect sense that they would try to they would change it that way, and it's it aligns up with the original book ending, probably because the book author also didn't believe fully in the completely nihilistic view of humanity and human society either. So I mean, at least back then, when they wrote the books and stuff.
Yeah. I think the other reason that I heard given for why the ending is different is that you can't have criminals.
Exactly.
Win. You can't show criminals win in China, so the police.
Like you can show like cities destroyed and stuff, but like you cannot show society, rule of law, and the human will losing, because that's fundamentally unsocialistic. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. But yeah, I think I might go and watch it. It's obviously, I'm sure, available now. It now. the different ending.
Mhm.
But
Oh
yes.
Jesus.
Oh, you dropped your pen. I'm glad you did because I didn't drop mine.
Well, it was my mic.
Oh, you dropped the mic. Drop the mic. Mic drop. Nice one.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Anyway, that is the end for us this week. That's all we have time
Yes.
for. So thank you so much for everyone who's been watching.
All
And
right.
if you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section.
Yeah.
And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, like, and share. Please share this so that we can get more viewers and we can get more comments and more input
Yes.
from you all, as well as see some more views and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Jen, and we'll speak to you next
Thank you.
week.